It's late, you're tired, and you're driving home alone. You notice someone may be following you. Or are they? You pull to the side. You leave your vehicle and confront the driver. Right or wrong? Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. On this week's show, we're going to take you to Florida for a reenactment in which we have entitled Facing the Towle. But let me introduce you to this week's panel. Wes Doss. Wes is an internationally recognized firearms, tactics, and use of force instructor with over 20 years of military, civilian, criminal justice experience. Wes has been the guest on our show many times, and we do appreciate his participation. Monica Rodriguez. Monica's had 13 years on the job as a law enforcement officer specializing in human trafficking investigations. Monica is presently working full-time with a private foundation in logistics, special projects, and risk assessment departments. Lieutenant Dan Marcou, readily known as Lieutenant Dan to many, the lieutenant has had 33 years total in law enforcement, written 4 books, and most often recognized by his articles on Police One. And speaking of the lieutenant, you have 4 books. Tell us about them.
I started writing. I didn't plan on writing, but I wrote a book called The Calling for my academy students so they'd get an idea of what law enforcement was like. The book took off. I established a readership, and I completed a trilogy with The Calling, 3 books. And then I found out that my readers wanted more, so I've just completed, with new characters, a book called Destiny of Heroes. The Destiny of Heroes is about a gentleman by the name of John Savage who meets one of the most wanted terrorists in the world. He doesn't know it at the time, in Iraq. They both survive the encounter, and there's 2 parallel stories where Savage comes back to the United States as a police officer, and the terrorist comes back for an assignment, and they're destined to meet again.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the trilogy. Now, is the trilogy, these are novels, right? These are not instructional manuals for law enforcement.
Well, yes and no. The first one was designed to give the academy students, I call it my novel idea for training. It was when-then thinking for academy students to know, this is what I'm getting into and this is why I'm training. And it's become very popular and effective as a training tool. What I found out is they want to find out what happened to the characters. So the follow-up books, although it continues in the vein of honorable, respectful policing, doing the difficult well, it makes for a good read. All my books, I'm told, the people that are reading them like reading them.
And they are available where?
They're available at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, or you can go on my website and you click on a link and it will get you to those books.
Okay, good. We look forward to actually seeing some of those books. And I think you brought some for me, so I'll get a chance to read them.
Yes, sir.
But let me just give a little bit of information about what's coming up. All of us, especially you folks that own a business, drive home and you may be followed. When we come back, I'll show it to you. Thank you for joining us again. I want to talk a little bit about facing the towle. How many of us have looked up in the rearview mirror and said, is that the same car that's been following me for about a block? Are you a business owner? Do you carry money in your vehicle? I'm going to show you part 1 and show you how this relates to you. Okay, you know what? I only saw one thing that went right here. And the one thing I saw that went right is he was absolutely sure he was being followed. I think he made all the right steps to assure himself that, yes, I am being followed. From that point on, I don't know that things went right. I think I would have done the things a lot differently. What do you think?
It appears that he's chosen to stop in a remote area as opposed to stopping in a place that's a little bit more populated.
Right.
Right.
That's the first one, and I like that one. I don't see any reason why he couldn't have driven to one of the convenience stores, somewhere where there are more people.
Right.
He's following you. I mean, you've done all the things to try to lose him, and so he's going to follow you to the store. Why not park in the lights where there's people around? That's one. What'd you see?
That's exactly what I saw. I mean, he did several attempts to do the turns to see if he was continually followed, and then he drove to a remote location as opposed to a well-lit or well-populated location, or to a like to a substation or to a precinct house.
Right. LT?
Actually had that happen to me one time, and the man was much more aggressive than this, and I thought it was somebody I had dealt with in the past, and I did just what Wes said. I led him to the ramp of the police department, and he drove off. I got the plate number, located him later in the night, and found out he was just an obnoxious, impaired, revoked, wanted ne'er-do-well that was trying to harass somebody for the sake of harassing him. And
he had no idea you were law enforcement.
No, in fact, when I arrested him, took him to jail, he says, "Is the complainant going to be in court?" I said, "Yeah, you'll see him then." And I never even told him it was me, because it was my personal car.
Right, yeah. Right.
So
that was a good reason.
That's what I would recommend to people. Write to a police department, or if that's not available, a crowded area.
Yeah, I like crowded areas. I like well-lit areas. But hey, what's wrong with calling 911 here? I'm being followed?
Right.
Is that call so foreign that it couldn't take place? Okay, you call 911. You say, "Listen, I'm being followed, and he keeps and here's where I am." And how does law enforcement respond to that? What are you going to do?
You have the person right on the phone, and they can tell you where the nearest squad is that's closest to you, and they will direct you right to that squad and bring the two of you together.
So number one, we would say, okay, if you're driving alone and you may or may not have a good reason for someone to be following you. Maybe you are a business owner. Maybe you do take money to your home or to some drop-off location after dark, all the things that are probably not safe, but you're doing it anyhow. Then calling 911 and saying something is certainly one good idea. And the other would be, even after dialing 911, maybe you went to to an area that is well lit. That's two. Anything else he could have done?
Those are the primary things that come to my mind. There's no reason to go to a remote area where it's not well lit and not well populated. That's the worst idea that anybody could have when they're being followed.
I mean, yeah, looks like he's getting ready to get out and walk up on the other car, which is the reverse of a traffic stop when an officer gets out on a car in the middle of the night, except that now the bad guy has his lights in your face.
Right.
You don't know what's inside that car.
Or how many people are in that car. Right.
State of mind,
what kind
anything.
of person you're dealing with.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So there's a lot of things that probably went wrong here. Go, LT. I can see you've got a burning issue.
Control your emotions.
Control your
man
emotion.
Who angers you conquers you. Even if it turns into a defense situation, I want to do it out of necessity rather than anger. And you could tell that person pulled over. He was angry about this man, and he didn't think straight, because, like Wes says, confronting that car and that driver is not smart under those circumstances.
Right. So at this point, I'm not sure that he did a lot of things right, except confirm the fact that he is being followed. And I think one thing is going to lead to another, and as we will see in part 2, that you'll see what took place. Don't go away. Thanks for coming back. We're trying to resolve the issue of facing the tail, some of the things you should and should not do. This particular reenactment, we are looking at an individual who's probably making a lot of mistakes, and I'm not sure that we're going to be happy with the results, but maybe. Let's see.
Why are you following me?
Give me everything you got.
Okay, let me just reassure you, for those of you who may be tuning in for the first, second, or maybe the third time, all the reenactments are taken from real reports. This did take place in the way that you've just seen it. We have not previewed this with the guests. This is the first time they have seen it as well. So we're commenting based on the same information that you have. And my first comment is, I don't like the fact he went hunting. And that's what he did in my term. He stops in the dark, he's armed himself, he's made a mental decision now that he is going to go hunting. And I don't like that. What do you say?
Well, whether he should have been there or not, he had a circumstance where he decided, I need a firearm. And he said nothing to indicate his intent. It looked to me, he did some things right, given the set of circumstances. He concealed the weapon, had it available, and then turned and said, why are you following me? Now the suspect points a gun at him, and at that point, he was decisive in his decision to defend himself and hit him in the middle of the sentence. I mean, tactically, that's a good situation. Should he have been there in the first place? There's one way to look at it, as he shouldn't have stopped, but there's another way of looking at it, the criminal shouldn't have followed him, because I always like to err in defense of the innocent citizen who's just minding their own business, even if they're not perfect in their response.
Yeah, this is a law-abiding citizen going about his natural way of doing business. He has armed himself, so he may have something in the vehicle, as I said earlier, which we may or may not actually find out about. And there was a reason for him, maybe someone stalking him because they know that he is carrying something that they want. Maybe they just want to steal a car. Okay, what I don't like about the hunting part, and I keep going back to that expression, is you have no idea who's in that other car.
Right. My impression of it is he came out of the vehicle assuming that he was the only person with a weapon, not taking into account that the other person coming out of the other car may also have a weapon. And then he found himself in a situation where they're now having a shootout. Again, in the dark, in a remote area. It seems almost as if he led the bad person to that area so that they could have that shootout.
With some kind of intent.
Doesn't seem right.
You know, and I don't know, that could be a legal thing too that comes up later. Just that point that you've made.
It could
why
be.
didn't you, sir, why didn't you go to a convenience store? Why didn't you go to a grocery? Why did you drive off into the dark? I mean, those kind of questions we're not going to know, because basically these reenactments happen quickly, and sometimes the judicial system has not closed on this case. And I don't know what the end of this case is yet. But Wes, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got the unintended consequences of your actions, and whether he's there for a lawful purpose or a decent purpose or a bad purpose is 6 of one, half a dozen the other. There were a lot of alternatives that could have been brought into play, and to willfully walk into a situation where you're going to have to go to guns on somebody, the level where that's emotionally charged at is a place where most people really truly don't want to be, and he had the alternative was to take this situation someplace else other than out in the middle of nowhere, where you knew, or at least had the forethought that you were going to have to go to guns with somebody on.
Right. LT?
Without all the information, I actually put myself in the place of that man who is on his way home, who has made a decision not to have this man come to my home. Maybe he does live in the middle of nowhere.
That's a good point.
And do I want to take him down the driveway? And I'm not close to a police department or a lighted area. And the thing I would have probably have done is rather than walk towards the car, if you're going to get out 90 degrees perpendicular away into the darkness, and now you're in a position behind cover, or at least to the front of the car, and now you have some cover. And once again, now ask him, why are you following me?
I agree with that.
I'd have a tendency, without all the facts, to think that maybe he just didn't have anywhere to take him, and he didn't want to leave him home.
Yeah, and that's some of the information we may never know about, actually. I mean, like I said, the judicial is not closed on this yet, so I'm not going to know that I'm not going to get those kind of reports. But it's a good point that maybe he has done the correct. You know, my first instinct was the superhero, and I'm going to go hunting for the bad guy, and all the things that I'm really not in favor of. But on that note that you just brought out, that's a good point. He didn't want to take him home. He again, though, he knows that the guy's going to follow him, so he has control at this point until he stops the car, and now control becomes an issue. When we come back, we'll talk more. Thank you for coming back. We've seen part 1 and part 2 of Facing the Tale. I think this instance, this has probably happened more often than not, and we don't hear about it a lot. But again, I want to say that if you're one of those individuals who may be carrying something valuable, and maybe you're doing it on a regular basis, you really need to be very cautious about where you are and what you're doing, and pay attention to who may be following you. And you know, I'm probably the worst at that. I don't spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, but I'm not expecting anyone to follow me. But we can agree on a couple of things here. One, don't stop in a dark area, and although you made an exception to that, go to a lit area with people and call 911. Is there something we've missed?
Those are the 3 main things that I can think of.
Okay, Wes?
No, I think that's it. There's all kinds of things to have done in advance. I think those 3 are the key.
Yeah.
Okay, LT?
And if you are somebody that carries large quantities of cash, have a plan. Actually think this out. And when this happens to me, then I am going to do this.
Right, and that's what the show's about, folks. We hope that you'll see something like this and you'll form a plan in your mind, and you'll be able to make that critical decision of draw or retreat. In this case, if you're going to go hunting, and I'm going to keep referring to it as that, and you're going to take on the bad guy head to head, as LT and I think we can all agree, certainly take a more tactful way of doing it. I like the idea of, you know, getting behind your car, using cover. Just don't pop out and start walking towards him or waiting for him. As I said earlier, he had control until he stopped the car. Once he stopped the car, control now becomes where? You know, it can go left or it can go right. He was just lucky, in my viewpoint, that it turned out the way it did. Okay. I've only got a couple of minutes left. I do want to read this viewer question. This is Doug from Amarillo, and he says, if someone breaks into my home, can I shoot them even if he does not have a gun? All right, let's leave out the state of Texas for a minute and go to Florida.
In Florida, you can. You have the right to protect your property.
Okay, same way in Texas, of course. Arizona.
Arizona, we do, but I think you need to take into consideration what's he doing in your home. And I only say that, and I think I brought this up on a previous episode. We have so many old retirees in our area. We have an influx of Alzheimer's people, and we've constantly got somebody that's wandered into somebody else's home or property in the middle of the night, especially during our fall and our spring months.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. LT?
In Wisconsin, what's going to be considered is what's reasonable. The size of the individual, your physical capabilities, what your skill level is, and what's that person's intent.
Yep.
You know, breaking in the house in the middle of the night, intoxicated person that's got in the wrong house, no. A person that's going to strangle you to death or beat you up with a chair or stab you with a knife, he gets out of your kitchen. Now we have a situation that's different.
And one more, actually, it just recently occurred to me when I was reading this, was the fact that if you have children,
Right.
and they snuck out, and hey, they can't get back in, and now they're trying to get in like a burglar would try to get in, this is putting you in a position where you need to identify who the bad guy is, huh?
Identification, acquisition, and isolation you want to have. A weapon intent delivery system. If I'm going to shoot this person, is he going to cause great death or great bodily harm to me? And who is it that I'm going to shoot?
Identify that person.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to go. I'm going to leave you with this stat. Every day in the United States, over 2,000 people use a gun for self-defense, to stop a crime, to save a life, or someone in their family. Be safe, be trained, be alert.